Hi, this is Scott Garibay. Today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to talk about F. Wesley Snyder's new Dragonlance, Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, the best D&D canon hardback of 2022, right? And what we're going to talk about today is battle reenactments within Dungeons & Dragons. Now this gets meta. Let's get into this. All right, so first of all, where are we? So we are in Chapter 3 of Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen. And previously, I incorrectly said it was called. I said it was called Prelude to War. Chapter 3 is the first chapter of the adventure in Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, and it is not called Prelude to War. That is actually the title of Chapter 2. Excuse me. I get things wrong every now and then. It happens. So basically, the title of Chapter 3 is When Home Burns. Interesting. Interesting that a game that just had a second group of people come and digitally burn its digital books after in 1983 people literally burned its physical books would talk about burning directly in the book, right? It's almost if they were prescient, right? Interesting. All right, so let's stay focused here. All right, so we're in Chapter 3, right, in Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, and we're in Vogler. We're in this quaint little fishing village, which is in Solamnia, okay? And the player characters have been brought to Vogler in order to celebrate the life of Ispin Greenshield, who was a human adventurer who had this thing he called the Green Shield, which was a wooden shield that was painted green that he claimed was magical. And it very well may have been magical. So one of them was right. Ispin Greenshield was right, and it was magical, and the world was wrong. Or the world who said, that's just a mundane green shield, was right, and Ispin was wrong, right? And that it was, and that it wasn't magical. However, science would tell us that maybe just his belief that it was magical made it magical, right? Wait, what are you talking about, Scott? Look up the word placebo, and you'll see what I'm saying. That is scientific, right? A sugar pill can do the same thing actual medical can do if you believe that it can. Science. What? Like, not all the time, intermittently. All right, okay, that's kind of like, wait, what now? Yeah, science brings some real banger information. This is pretty interesting, okay? All right, so let's keep going here. So, the player characters are in Vogler, right? They've been invited for this funeral. And basically they go to the funeral. The funeral goes great, and they chop it up with the people who love Ispin Green Shield, which is one of your player characters or all of your player characters, and human knight of Solamnia, Becklin, and dwarf mercenary captain Cudgel, right? So Captain Cudgel of the Ironclad Regiment, right? So then you're in Vogler, and they say, hey, we got the Kingfisher Festival happening right now, right? So the Kingfisher Festival is this thing that happens annually in Vogler, and they're like, tomorrow we're going to put on a battle reenactment, right? And we're going to reenact the Battle of High Hill, okay? This is what I want to talk about. This is a battle reenactment in Dungeons & Dragons, right? That's pretty wild. That's very meta, right? Like, you're telling your player characters, hey, tomorrow your characters are going to go into a battle. You'll slay no one. You're going to pretend to hit people with your sword, and you're going to take the same actions that happened in a battle long ago, right? Like, that's weird. Why would this be in a Dungeons & Dragons book, right? And I think a lot of people who play like OSC or DCC or Pathfinder would think that boring. They're like, wait, I don't get to cut something in half? No, you have to act while you're acting, right? Like, this is very meta. Like, we're getting deep, right? Because we don't just use the game to cut goblins in half. We use Dungeons & Dragons to cut our own deficiencies in half, right? To learn about the world and to be more than we are, right? Like, that's what, in my humble opinion, that's what it's for, right? So it's really fascinating because now you're at the point where you're like, wait, are we talking about battle? Are we talking about battle reenactments in Dungeons & Dragons? And the answer is yes, right? And you're like, well, this is really odd because, like, I barely understand battle and for me, I'm like, wait a second, where are you going with this, F. Wesley Snyder? Are you trying to make me learn? Are you trying to make me grow? Like, because I'm like, I don't really understand battle reenactments normally, right? Like, I live near Valley Forge. And those people do battle reenactments every year. And I'm like, what is the point of dressing up like people 200 years ago, right? And reenacting a battle we already won. We beat the South, man. We handed them their butt and said, get gone, get good, right? You know, like, God be on our side because we're doing the right thing. We're like, both in defeating England and then when the Yankees defeated those Southerners, right? We were clearly on the right side of history, like that, like we got you on that one, right? Like, yeah. So what is a battle reenactment for, right? It's a very fascinating, very interesting question. What is a battle for, right? A battle reenactment for. Now, first of all, at first I had thought that battle reenactments were just for people who lose, right? And I thought that they do more battle reenactments down in the South than they do here in the North. But I don't think that's right. I think, I actually know for a fact we do quite a few battle reenactments here in the North as well, right? So I don't think it's necessarily for those who lose, right? So what is the point of reenacting a battle, right? So one, here's my take, right? I do think it's something we should really be looking at as a society. One, is it valuable and useful? I think my answer is yes. I don't do it. I'm not going to spend my weekends out in the cold, carrying a fake musket and wearing like a white linen shirt. Like, that seems like not a lot of fun, and sleeping in a bad tent. No, none of that sounds good, right? But I'm glad that there are people who are doing it. And one is to preserve the history, to say, this battle happened. These were the weapons that were used. These were the clothes that they wore. This is literally the path, right, that the great Yankees used to defeat the Southerners, right? They went right down this river right here, right? And that's when we kicked their butts, right? Like, that is valuable, right? And you can, as an adult, you can go see that. As a kid, you can go see that. And the kids are like, wait a second, you saying like 200 years ago, Americans killed Americans? And the answer is yes, right? It was worth fighting over because what was happening in the South was absolutely horrific, right? Like, and it needed to end, right? And the Yankees did what needed to get done to preserve the nation and end this horrific thing that was happening in the South, right? Like, that we were helping people escape here in the North, because we the hero in this story, right? Like, Yankees up, right? Right? I'm a Yankee, right? I live in the North, right? Okay, all right. So, and that is incredibly valuable, right? The other thing is, you and I, we have Dungeons and Dragons, and it's so precious, right? It lets us jump into these identities, right? And for us, we have 100 identities. We have, all these. Or if we're a dungeon master, we literally have 1,000 identities, right? And it helps us to think in a different way, to empathize in a different way, to have these different sensory experiences, to have these memories, to have these different sets of emotions, right? To have these different personalities, right? And that's exactly what these reenactors are doing, right? They are, they're thinking, and many of them actually choose a specific person, right? And say, this might be my ancestor, or this might be somebody I read in a book, right? And they're using the same clothes, they're using the same tools of literally a dead person, like, and in a small way, bringing them back. It's incredible, right? And what really astounds me is that we see battle reenactment inside Dungeons and Dragons, which points us to go look at the battle reenactments that are happening in our own world. And that's going to be my takeaway from Dragonlance, is like, this year, I'm not going to skip the Valley Forge battle reenactment. I'm going to go check it out and learn from it and see, and say, I see you, reenactor. Before, I just thought you were a bad LARPer, right? But now I realize I go to Dungeons & Dragons to inhabit these other people, right? And to learn and grow and empathize and feel and sense and remember, and put just a different set of all those things into my head, into my heart, into my spirit, right? And I want to experience them from the perspective of an ally of identity. The thing that they are like me, right? An astronaut explores space. An identity naut, right? That's what you and I are. We explore other identities, right? and we bring people who never were forward, or the reenactments are bringing people who were back. It's fascinating, right? And F. Wesley Snyder's Dragonlance has far surpassed anything Hickman or Weiss ever even approached, right? And he's really taken their work, which is valuable. It's valuable. It's just less valuable than his work, right? So at this point, F. Wesley Snyder owns Dragonlance, not in a literal sense, but in like having accomplished the greatest work. He's far surpassed Hickman or Weiss, like, and it's needed because Hickman and Weiss are like 80, right? Like, and I'm not sure how many novels you're going to be getting or source books at this point, right? Like, so their work needed to be picked up, and it needed to be handed over to someone who can protect it and surge it forward, and all that, every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. But what's important is your humble opinion, which I'm going to get to hear when you get in the comments. Send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful morning.